Welcome! It's time for the main event of the evening. And in the red corner, weighing 145 pounds, he weighs in. So I've already said that. His height is 6'4". He's a sexy beast. Currently single, Jackson, aka the Marshal, on the Filmsy. And in the blue corner, he weighs in at 445 pounds. He weighs 6'4". He's currently dating a lovely woman. His name, Alan Daniels. I'm good. Thanks for asking. Jackson, how are you?
Don't sell yourself short, Dan Allen Movies. 445 pounds? I thought you were tipping the scales at maybe 485 pounds. At least you might be after ISO. Although, rumor has it, you've got a little backyard project going on there. Fill our listeners in. What's taking up your weekends at the moment?
The bloody decking. The bloody decking, mate. Couple of beers and fuck. You know, as my favourite director said...
It's like, fuck it.
Well, that didn't work, did it?
It's like, fuck it, you know? I
mean... No, it's going good. We're building the deck. And what have you been up to, Jackson? Very smooth. Very smooth show so far.
Dan. Watching a few movies, checking out some new content. Cinemas might be on their last legs.
Oh, don't say that.
Our faithful listeners would have heard the news. Matrix 4, Wonder Woman 1984. Every big movie Warner Brothers are going to be pushing out from the end of this year and into 2021 will see not only releases at the cinemas, but they will also see exclusive releases for, I believe it's the first 30 days of their run on HBO Max. This isn't the first time that we have seen this kind of release schedule from streaming services. Netflix have also been notorious to do this. However, not quite for movies worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Dan, what's your take on what this will mean for the box office gross of some of these movies, franchises, and what listeners and the public, really anyone, can expect for the fate of cinema moving forward?
I've got a more optimistic approach to what's going on here, okay? The reason is that HBO Max have committed this for 2021. The reason I believe is that COVID, they don't believe will be fully over next year in the US and other markets, okay? They never said they're going to continue on with this model. Maybe they will if they see a lot of success, which they probably will see a lot of success. But I see, this is the way I see it panning out in the future. I see it, typically the release window between coming to theatre and then coming out digitally is at least 90 days, I believe, okay? Maybe more for some movies, maybe less, but majority, at least 2 to 3 months before you can get it digitally. I see that shortening in the future. I see it being maybe a 14, 21 day window where you can get in early, but then after that, it will be released digital as it fades away in the cinema. Now, if they're going to go that approach, what I say is you need to give the cinemas a bigger check. Let's just say, because if you didn't know, all the distributors take, is it half, maybe more, of the ticket sales of their movies and take it back. If they're going to be getting digital sales as well, they need to take less, is what I would say. So is it a good thing for some? Yeah, I know a lot of people that just love that they don't have to go to the movies to watch all these HBO, Wonder Woman, the list goes on. And for me, some of those movies, I want to see it in the cinema. There's no doubt. But other ones, it is a bit of a luxury just to be able to watch it at home. What are your thoughts?
It's such a sadness And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the opinion from our very good friend of the show, David. But we won't. We did hear him on episode 40 on Freaky talking about this very subject. Look, Dan, imagine if the 14-day period does go ahead where,
Yeah.
a movie will only play in cinemas for 14 to 21 days before becoming available digitally, such as premium video on demand, either through a streaming service or just widely seen on demand.
Mm.
What's the point of pushing it out for 14 days? Can movie theaters, with your enormous overheads having to rent or purchase such a big space, is that a viable option financially? I don't know, but we're not here to crunch too many numbers here at the podcast. We're here to talk about what we've seen this week. And for episode 42, what are we talking about, Dan?
We are taking a look at Possessor. Now, this is a film I'm keen to discuss. Me and Jackson saw this one in the theaters together. It's our first movie in a long, long time. And it was definitely an experience, Jackson. We watched the uncut version. Let's get a glimpse of what this thing's all about.
Ready?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Wow. That is a very, very creepy trailer, Jackson.
Isn't it just? Teja Voss is a corporate agent who uses brain implant technology to inhabit other people's bodies, driving them to commit assassinations for the benefit of the company. While she has a special gift for the work, her experiences on these jobs have caused a dramatic change in her, and in her own life, she struggles to suppress violent memories and urges. As her mental strain intensifies, she begins to lose control, and soon, Voss finds herself trapped in the mind of a man whose identity threatens to obliterate her.
Oh man, that I gotta say that trailer was phenomenal. I hadn't seen that before, and I luckily did not see anything going into this film. Did you? Did you know much?
I didn't know much beyond the concept and what we covered there in the synopsis that
Yeah.
Andrea Riseborough, who our listeners will recognize from Mandy. If you haven't listened to that episode we covered, go check it out, and please be sure to watch Mandy as well. That was an absolute rip snorter of a horror movie, available on Shudder, promo code
And
WWT.
That might be a pun, that word, rip snorter.
It might be. But back to Possessor. Going in, I hadn't seen a trailer. All I knew about was the concept. I knew about the poster, and I knew that it was written, directed by the son of Mr. David Cronenberg. That would be Brandon Cronenberg, his second ever feature and second in the director's chair. Dan, for our listeners who will listen to this episode or have heard that trailer, how do you recommend they go in if they want to see Possessor? What should they know?
Oh man, I want to say go in blind, but a lot of people these days will not. They need to know what it's about. This isn't for everyone. I'll tell you now.
Should they know what it's about?
Yeah, it's a tough one because
you said we saw it uncut, and this is playing widely in the cinemas worldwide and has been since the beginning of October in its uncut form. It may be released onto various streaming services, and those that won't see an R-rated or an NC-17 rated film in the US, I should say, won't see that in its uncut form. We did, and maybe you should kind of know what you're in for, because it's going to be graphic. It's going to be
so you can't watch it not uncut in the theater.
Maybe if you were in a country, look, I guess if you're in a country that is going to have to cut a lot of this graphic violence, graphic gore and sex, it's probably not going to play at all. So, yeah. But going in that uncut
scenes.
word, it's big.
Some of these scenes you can't get rid of, I don't think.
No,
Maybe you
and
can. I don't know, maybe you can.
I really did some research, went right down the rabbit hole. I wanted to find out what did end up on the cutting room floor to make, I guess it's cut release, I should say, particularly for some American streaming services. I couldn't find concrete evidence, but, and we'll go into it when we get into spoilers, I think you and I both know some of the violent images and shots that definitely wouldn't have made the cut.
Oh, it's a gory film, and I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I know this sounds dumb, but I thought the movie was called Possessor Uncut. I actually thought, I didn't know it was the uncut version. Yes, I sound completely stupid, I understand. Once I saw the gore, I quickly realized, and some of the other scenes, this is considered a horror film on the books, right? But I don't think it's not all a horror film. It's not your typical horror film, although there is that
It's
gore.
not your typical anything.
It's not your typical anything.
It's not. It's
Although-
it's cerebral, it's graphic, and in a word, probably the best word you can use to describe this movie, and don't you worry, Danella Movies, I'll give you the mic back in just a moment. It is visceral.
Visceral. My favorite word, and that completely sums it up. It was a roller coaster of a ride. I really, really enjoyed it. After reflection, now, I will say I've only seen it once. I want to see it a second time.
Yeah.
If that gives you an indication, because I think you get more out of it the second time, which is what I've said about some other films recently. Now, I really enjoyed it. And this is a sort of film. This is a film that you would see, you would call very artsy, fartsy. You know, it's got all everything you would expect. The cinematography, that feeling, that uneasy feeling, that music. We were just playing some of that music then. That music is just, what's the word for that music? It's just so uneasy.
It's unnerving, and it's guaranteed to make your skin crawl, especially when, like us, we have seen the movie in the theaters. We've had the bass rumbling and vibrating, the early onset tinnitus. You remember that from our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode. Once you've experienced that, now hearing it again, you're going to flash back, just like our protagonist Voss, expertly played by Andrea Riseborough. You're going to experience those same kind of violent memories. And Dan, it has been a couple of weeks since we've seen this film. Now that we're here recording, I'm so glad that it sounds like you enjoyed it as much as I did. For our listeners who aren't aware, and you weren't aware going into it what you were going to watch, didn't we have a third visitor come to the cinemas with us?
Yeah, my girlfriend Shani came along, and let's just say she didn't make it halfway without picking up the phone. And that's an indication of all the casuals out there of what you're going to come to expect with this film.
The casuals?
Really? What else do you want to call them? Casual moviegoers. It's not. It's
filthy casuals.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a casual moviegoer, you're not listening to this podcast, so it's all good. But yeah, she did not enjoy it whatsoever. She couldn't tell you anything about it, but she's shocking when it comes to movies, so we're not going to go off her opinion.
She's a great barometer. If it's an art house film, she's going to hate it. And if it's something mainstream, she's going to love it.
This is what's so stupid. She
What?
liked Midsummer. Yes.
What?
Yes,
No way.
Jackson.
How could she like that and not like
it? Doesn't make sense. And she liked Hillbilly Elegy, which we covered last week.
We don't need to go back into that.
We don't need to go back into that. But what I will say, this film had my skin crawling. The last time I had a film making me this uneasy was The Invitation. That back in 2015, whenever that released, or maybe sooner. But just the feeling of this movie, I'm actually scared to go back and watch it again for that reason alone. I know it's just such an itty, weird vibe, and some of those scenes, I don't know how to depict them or how to say what they're about. Describe them, because it seems to be all practical. Where when they're fighting between the souls, you know what I'm talking about, and they're fighting and they're doing this amazing editing to put this together with some flash effects, which I don't think there's anything added on. I think it's all practical, just with the music, and it really is the word psychedelic. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's very psychedelic in the similar, if not the same way that Mandy is. But whereas Mandy had digital film grain and a lot of work done in post-production, other than the editing that you mentioned, Dan Allen movies, I was so excited to say this. Pretty much everything we're seeing here is done in camera. So not only practically, but it's in camera. Later on, some of the more frightening sequences with Voss's face being ripped off by Colin, the man that she inhabits. Look, there's no spoilers there, people. It's on the poster. That's all in camera. And the fact there that it's something tangible, it's something real, it's even more freaky to sit there and watch.
And you got to love the concept. You got to love the concept. I swear, has this been done before? It must have. It has to have been done in some
You know
form
what? You know what it really reminded me of, and
Yeah.
that was Charlie Kaufman's Being John Malkovich, directed by Spike Jonze.
Yeah.
Spike Jonze, I should say.
Yeah.
It feels like Charlie Kaufman come Christopher Nolan, and he grew up watching 80s body horror. That's what this movie kind of feels like. So
Hey, that's
Brandon
probably his
Cronenberg-
life. That's probably his life, hey?
Well, that's
Never
it
know.
exactly. So Brandon Cronenberg's father, David, he's directed The Fly, Scanners, Crash, some pretty super
Fly.
serious sci-fi and horror films. Yeah, and it's all very reminiscent. What really stands out here, other than the graphic gore and sex that we've mentioned and the visceral feeling, is the ambiguity and the mystery surrounding this film. You want to go back and watch it a second time, just like you said, Dan, so that you can pick
and
up
that
on even more.
always gets me a bit of mystery. You know that.
And you have no
Oh.
idea what's going on throughout the whole movie, but that's what makes it so great.
Anything with mystery in the title, any sort of mystery, you've got me. You've got me. I'm in the rod. I'm coming back, and you're gonna eat me for dinner. Yes, I'm a fish. Hey, hey,
Where is this analogy going?
hey, look. Sean Bean is in the movie as well. That's a spoiler. He pops up again, and if you've seen a few Sean Bean movies, you know there's a certain thing that happens to his characters that I won't go into, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you know some people will be happy to see. I don't know.
We'll say this: it's the Sean Bean double whammy. Not only does he play an antagonist, but he plays a father as well. And anyone who's watched anything with Sean Bean in it knows exactly what's going to happen to this character.
Oh man, no, far out. I couldn't believe it when he popped up. And he's such a good actor, but he's just not in a lot these days. Maybe he's picky, or I'm not seeing the movies he's in. I just don't see him pop up anymore. Do you?
No, but can you really blame the guy? I mean, look, he did have that season 1 Game of Thrones money.
I completely forgot he was in. Oh,
Mate,
that's another story.
That was a decade ago.
You know what? Yeah, I know. But when I first watched Game of Thrones, I was a little bit late to the party, and he popped up. Spoilers for Game of Thrones, when he died in the first season.
Spoilers.
I literally was going to turn the show off and never watch it again. I've never been so pissed off about a character. He was the main character. He was so lovable the whole time. Gone. I was actually so pissed off. I've never been that pissed off at a show for killing off a guy. Fuck, when his head. Anyway.
Having now watched every season, do you regret not making that decision?
Maybe the last season. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that here. Now, another thing I liked about this movie was this battle between these two souls going. Are we getting into spoilers now? Should I roll it?
Just hit it. Just hit.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, I mean, classic, isn't it? Far out. The battle of the two souls.
No, I'm gonna
Go
stop you. I'm gonna stop you. We did just announce, we've uploaded 2,800 minutes of content on Spotify alone.
Can you believe that?
I crunched the numbers, people. We did the math. It's coming up to 50 hours of produced episodes, produced recordings you and I have done as podcast hosts, yet still the best
gets
segue
worse.
you have coming out of a queue is,
Yeah. And it only gets worse by every episode. Oh, far out. The queues get worse. It's a garbage truck on fire, isn't it? We've always said it. We've always said it, mate.
It really is. It's just a runaway train with there's no driver, no one's in control. Take us through the cerebral battle, a contest for identity, for power, for dominance between Voss and Colin, between Andrea Riseborough and Christopher Abbott, who both rock the screen. All yours.
It's the core of the film, and it does one of the best jobs at portraying this I've ever seen before in the theatre. Is it due to those practical effects? Is it the acting? I think it's everything. Everything put together. I think this is one of the best edits I've seen all year. Incredible edit. You have to give credit to the editor, as well as the music. It all comes together. But the battle there...
I want to credit the editor, Matthew Hannum. Okay, Matthew Hannum.
We'll keep an eye on him. I just found it enthralling. I was glued to the screen. And I have to say, this film isn't a fast-paced film. It's slow. Much like The Invitation, it takes its time. And it'll hit in certain beats, but for the most part, it is quite slow-moving. But boy, do they do a good job. And by the end, you don't know who's in whose body. That's why I want to watch it again. Because I've got absolutely no clue about that ending. What did you think?
Yes, 110%, Dan. I had no idea, really, throughout most of Colin's arc, from the moment that Andrea Riseborough takes over. We're never quite sure who's in control. And Christopher Abbott, who's doing an impression of Andrea Riseborough playing Christopher Abbott, it's another dream within a dream analogy.
Yeah. Hey, he did a phenomenal job, didn't he?
Absolutely. There's layers to this, just like an onion, just like an ogre. There's layers to it. And at first, it can seem very cold and very distant, especially in his performance, as we're thinking, geez, there's not a lot of depth to this guy. We're not quite sure what's going on. Because what we're seeing is an internal struggle, is a battle for supremacy, for who's going to take over this body. And there's something interesting here at play about who are you if you're not in your body, if your soul or your being, your mind is in someone else. That's where I'm relating this to Charlie Kaufman's script for Being John Malkovich. It's just, there's so much going on here in this 104 minutes that it's brilliant. Plus, not only do we get a mind tickler, we also get a bunch of graphic violence. You're going to be squirming and screaming in your seat. It's practically unwatchable at times, which if you're like us, we do kind of enjoy some of that. And even some sex in there just to make this a big holy trinity of mindfuckery.
That sex scene, were they battling for supremacy over that woman? That's what I got.
Was Voss not always in control? And was there not something... I want to make a point here about the movie. At some stage, this is like a bit of a feminist and a female empowerment film. For Voss, we are in spoiler territory here. The fact that she sheds all these pasts and dead and no longer wanted remnants of her previous life with her estranged husband and her son, it's kind of set up early in the film by Jennifer Jason Leigh's character Gerda, where she says, she mentions a line, and look, it's another quick throwaway line similar to some of Nolan's movies where blink and you miss it, or I guess turn away or don't pay attention, you'll miss it, where she mentions, you'd be better off without them. You should cut them loose. And what does Voss do by the end of the film? Well, she's destroyed her entire life. She's going to throw herself into her work, and that was her decision. She's got nothing holding her back. That's pretty troubling stuff. It's a lot to digest.
She's not a likable character. I'll give you that. I wasn't rooting for her, unfortunately. I just couldn't.
Who are you rooting for?
No one really. There's no real glimpse of hope in this depressing world that they've created here. But what did you think? I wanted to get your opinion because I had no idea. The shots of these exterior shots where the camera will turn like that and come in, so it's rotating while zooming in. What's the point of that in your eyes? Do you have an opinion on that? Because I love that sort of shit in movies. I'm trying to understand what that's giving me, because I seriously
just thought of it. I love that kind of shit in movies.
Love that shit.
If that's not the best, most rousing recommendation for a movie yet, oh god,
love that shit.
My opinion. Oh, look, there is some kind of deep reading we can do here about what we're watching in this kind of perspective, it may not be all it's cracked up to be. This isn't to be trusted. Are we really to be seeing the world through Voss's eyes? Like,
okay.
we can't really. We're meant to relate to her because she is pretty much the protagonist of the story, but in another way, she's also the antagonist. By the way, Dan, for our listeners, you mentioned this editing job by Matthew Hannum. Check some of these movies he's worked on. Swiss Army Man, the A24 film with Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe. It Comes at Night, starring your man Joel Edgerton. And back in 2013, he's a Canadian editor, so wouldn't you know it, he did Denis Villeneuve's Enemy.
Oh, now that's an impressive list. And I actually think that the main, I don't know what his name is, forgive me, the main guy in this film. What's his name?
Colin Tate, played by Christopher Abbott.
He is in It Comes at Night.
He is. I wanted you to find this link. You did it.
Yes.
You've got the algorithm.
He pops up in a lot of films, and good films too. He is a talent. They're both talents. But
I reckon he's got to be a star on the rise here. At only 34 years old, he's got one big break ahead of him.
I don't know if he can ever get to that next level just because of the way, you know, he's never really been in a comedy that I've seen. You know, he's always been a villain type, you know, or a, you know what I mean. So anyway, Jackson.
Well, he's in a fair few thrillers and art house films, right?
A lot of that. Which is, hey, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Jackson, I'm keen to hear my favorite segment and one of the greatest cues. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe if you hit the right cue.
Jackson's ratings.
IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, audience score, and Letterboxd.
It took 42 episodes, but you got there. A round of applause for our man, DJ Dan Allen. Alrighty, now, Dan
Margaretti.
still he's given me plenty of criticisms about the length of this segment, which,
come on,
listeners, go back and listen to the top of this episode.
Bring it in.
I mean, the guy's more than happy to sit here
Reel
for
it
minutes
in.
on end and ramble and rant, and I'm definitely not doing the same. Here we go.
Here we go. Reel it in. Here we go.
Let's
the big three. Here we go. The big three.
Just like some of these shots that Dan loves of the twisting and zooming and shifting, how about we flip this segment on its head? Letterboxd have been enjoying this film so far. It's currently rated 3.7 out of 5, watched by almost 25,000 members, rated by almost 22,000 of them, and liked by almost 8,000. A Metascore of 72 from 27 critic reviews, a user score of 7.4 from 22 ratings. Rotten Tomatoes, the audiences, 68% of audience members have given this a 3. Well, sorry, I've already butchered the math. I think someone's taking over my body. An audience score of 68%, which means 2/3 of audiences have given it a score of 3.5 out of 5 or more, average of 3.42 out of 5. Tomato meter, listeners, Possessor, be it in its cut or uncut form, is certified fresh. Go and check it out. 93% of critics have given it a positive review, and there's 173 reviews collated so far. So if you're still on the fence, you watched and listened to the trailer, you've heard some of our things you might be put off, look, go read something because you'll probably like it. Finally, IMDb, 6.4 out of 10 from 9,000 user ratings.
Wow, it's very nice.
Lots of sixes and in between 6 and 7. I think it's a bit low. But it's expected because it's very, very slow and very, very artsy. So that's always going to bring it down for a lot of these films, unless it's a cult classic. But this will definitely be more appreciated on a second viewing, which I'm going to do as soon as it's out digitally. And it is going to be one of those films, I believe, that maybe film students will study. You know, it might be one of those films you can get a lot out of it theme-wise, and, you know, it'd be a great film to just completely dissect on an essay, as well as I just think over time people will appreciate this more and more, and people will find it, and after 100,000 ratings or so on IMDb, you could see this at a 7.5 or higher by the end. And I'm guessing by the nod, you agree with D.A. Jackson. Why don't you kick off your final rating?
Geez, we forget sometimes we're here doing a podcast, video cast, whatever it might be. I'm sitting here silently nodding. I don't have any further points to make because Dan is hitting the nail on the head. Before I go into this final rating, we really are only just scratching the surface in episode number 42 here of the We Watch This Movie podcast when it comes to Possessor. That point you said about dissecting and pulling apart this film, I mean, here at the podcast, that's what we do. We cover the latest and greatest in movies, contemporary cinema. This is already out on digital streaming. So if you can't get to the cinemas, go check out Possessor. You're going to want to break it down like the first, third act, sequence by sequence, scene by scene. We haven't even mentioned the data mining. Have you forgotten all about that by the time?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was great. I
where
love
Paul
that.
Collins' job is to go in and point out what color are the curtains in these people's rooms and everything that's happening. Like,
that's
once we get to
crazy,
that
man.
stage,
That's crazy because that could happen. In a futuristic world, it could be happening. You don't know.
it might be sci-fi, but who's to say that this stuff isn't happening right now?
I saw
Possessions or
something
not.
similar to that in a movie. I don't know what it was, but where people were going through an airport and they would get specific ads for them. It was connected to them, so as they walk past this billboard, they would get a certain ad for their characteristics or whatever. So, and I have seen something recently where in actual real life, there's a billboard that actually has a camera that sees you and detects your mood. How weird is that?
Ooh.
Yeah, after seeing the billboard. So, very, very interesting. I don't think it'd be able to detect your mood, Jackson, because you've got a resting bitch face 24/7. Only kidding. Jackson, final rating. Hit me with it. I'm really keen to hear this rating.
You asked to be hit with it, Dan. That's why I'm going to hit you straight in the skull with 8 out of 10 fireplace pokers to the face. There's a lot to digest in this sci-fi, psychological, techno-thriller horror, Possessor Uncut. We can't recommend it anymore. It's going to be another one of our top movies. Dan, bring us home. What's your final rating for Brandon Cronenberg's stellar, splendid mind fuck film?
Now, I had it at a 7, walking out of the theatre. But after taking it in, feeling all the feelings had been dissected, I thought, this has got to be an 8. With a rewatch as well, I think that'll definitely solidify an 8. So I'm going to call it early here, 8 out of 10. If I do change my mind, you'll hear about it. But 8 out of 10 for me as well. I think it's a fantastic film. I believe it's the best horror of this year. Best horror of this year for sure. And it's going to be in my top 10 of the year, I think. We're now in December, so I just don't see anything. There wasn't much this year as well. So this is easily going to come in. Maybe even top 5. We'll see.
I think it's going to be in both of our top 5s for sure. And you said we haven't seen a lot this year. There are still many films from 2020 we haven't seen. You know what, Dan? This first saw its world premiere back at Sundance. And get some of the competition here was alongside.
Yeah.
A24's Minari, which still hasn't seen a wide release. And
I
is
want to watch
meant
that.
to be one of those top films.
Guy from Walking Dead, what's his name?
Oh, yes.
You know
I
it.
cannot remember.
Yeah, you know his name.
Glenn from Walking Dead.
Glenn.
Netflix's The Social Dilemma. Alison Brie's Horse Girl, which we did briefly touch on maybe 20 or so episodes ago. And finally, Relic, also played at Sundance.
Yeah, nice. So
So
we've covered
there's
it.
another one
We've seen
we
a
have
lot of
covered.
those. We haven't seen Monaro, though. Is that how you say it? Manara. Manara. Hey, I've heard it's
Moving
really
on.
good. I've heard it's really good. I give A24 slack, muck man. You can get fucked man. Oh, God, I'm good. All right, look. It's been another fantastic episode.
It is. One sec, just for the listeners, let's make
Yeah.
it really clear. Yeah, it's probably going to end up both in our top 5. 16 from 20, 8 from 10, 4 from 5. go out and check Possessor. Now, thank you so much for sticking around for another amazing, excellent, just superb episode of the We Watch This Movie podcast. Follow us on our social media at We Watch This Podcast. Send us a DM, give us a suggestion. Please rate us 5 stars. Subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. It would mean the world to us. It's the best way to grow this show. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to learn more. Even drop a comment. Dan just loves reading them and hearing about your criticisms of him hating on a
Please
24
criticize
movie.
me. Call me a goofball. Call me a dickhead. Throw it my way, and I will bite back with double
Or
the force.
he may just croak, as evidenced by his voice breaking. Now, here's Dan Allen Movies. I am Marshall on Film. Listeners, as we head deeper into December, we've got more planned. It's just released. David Fincher's Mank is coming to this podcast. We've got another special sponsored show from Shudder, and we might even have a 2020 wrap-up on the cards. One final time, Dan Allen Movies, Marshall on Film. Thank you.